The warp is a strange and terrible place. You might as well throw a traveler into a sea of sharks and tell him to swim home, as to send him through the warp unprotected. Better it is not to let common man travel through the stars. Better still, let him not know such a thing is feasible.
Greeting, listeners. My name is Arya, and I would like to welcome you to today's broadcast, in which I will endeavor to give the briefest of primers into the properties of the Immaterium, the warp, and the dark secrets that reside within. In truth, even the mighty Emperor would have been unable to conquer the stars without taking advantage of what we now know as the warp. The warp is a secondary reality that lives alongside of our own, often referred to as the Immaterium, the Empyrean, or the Aether, some primitive cultures referring to it as the Sea of Souls. The warp is an alternate dimension of purely psychic energy that echoes and underlies the familiar four dimensions of the material universe. The Immaterium is also rumored by many cultures, both human and Xenos alike, to be the final resting place for the spirits of the dead. Some of my fellows within the Mechanicus believe this to be truth, which would go to explain why such a belief has been prevalent in almost every sentient race to ever dwell within this galaxy. The most common form of interaction that the Imperium has with the warp comes in the form of faster-than-light travel. The warp functions as a medium, allowing great void craft to use their warp drives to pierce the veil between the two realities. Once in the warp, using the power of a psychic navigator to move between the flowing currents of the warp, not dissimilarly to how a ship moves through the ocean. These navigators use something called the Astronomicon. The Astronomicon is a beacon sent out by the Emperor as he sits upon his golden throne on Terra itself. This beacon allows the navigator to know their location within the Immaterium relative to Holy Terra itself. Truly, the Emperor guides all of its crafts through the void. However, the very energies that make up the Immaterium is believed to be a direct result of the existence of sentience in the universe. In particular, the intelligent species of the Milky Way galaxy seem to have left quite the mark on the warp itself. It is considered to be a dark reflection of the material universe. It is an ocean of chaotic psychic energy, raw emotion given form. And that form, dear listener, is often terrifying and deadly.
The warp is our greatest gift, and also our greatest threat. It is curse and boon, hope and terror, a raging inferno through which we must plunge, or else be lost.
It is very important, when regarding the Sea of Souls, to understand that everything that exists within the Immaterium was brought there by the unconscious emotion and psychic connection of sentient races. The feeling of anger one gets when assaulting a foe, the ambition to rise above one's station, the will to fight against disease or famine, or the lust one would feel for a lover. All of these emotions go to feed and shape the Immaterium. And thus, you have the Realm of Chaos. The Realm of Chaos is a portion of the Immaterium that is completely controlled by the four great gods of chaos. The Ruinous Powers, as they are often referred to, are as follows. Korn, the Blood God, Slanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, Tzeentch, Lord of Change, and Nergal, the Lord of Decay. these four powers will constantly war and fight each other in the great game in an attempt to gain supremacy over the other. Even so, there are specific rivalries between the four that bear more hateful fruit than others. Khorne, the god of blood, skulls, and martial prowess, despises Slaanesh, for Slaanesh is the god of decadence, excess, and pleasure, which is the antithesis to Khorne's rule. Whereas Tzeentch, the great lord of ambition, change, and trickery, sees Nergal as his greatest rival due to Nergal's propensity to encourage stagnation and despair within his followers. Denizens of the warp that live alongside the Ruinous Powers and do their bidding are oft called demons. It is important to remember that demons have no physical presence within the warp. Instead of possessing a true physical form, demons project a form conjured by the raw psychic energy that is essentially a lesser interpretation of their divine master's fundamental nature. Hence, the bizarre and inhuman appearances projected by demons indicate their presence, status, and allegiance to a chaos god. It is also important to understand that every demon will appear differently depending on who beholds it. To a denizen of a primitive world, the demons may take on a monstrous form similar to the apex predator that stalks them in the night. For a more civilized being, it may take the form of a childhood story, something told to them to keep them obedient to their parents. They may find standing directly in front of them, with a snarling face and venomous intention. Now, why do I tell you this? These stories of the horrors that dwell within the Immaterium. Well, it is important to understand why travel through this place is so dangerous. When a voidcraft enters the warp, it does so while taking a small bubble or pocket of our reality with it. Within this bubble they are protected, shielded from the horrors within. However, if that were to fail, if just for the briefest of moments, then all manner of madness and doom will visit upon the ship. Even the Emperor's own angels, the Adeptus Astartes, are loath to fight demons within their own reality.
7 months. 7 months! There are barely 40 of us left. No food. We ate the crew. Hateful mouthfuls of leathery flesh and dry bones. There was no water. Water tanks ruptured in the storm damage. We drank promethium fuel, weapon oils, engine coolant. Sire, we've been killing each other. We have been drinking each other's blood to stay alive.
I hope that this brief glimpse into the nature of the warp has left you enlightened. Enlightened to the horrible necessity of such a method of intergalactic conveyance. The warp has allowed humanity to conquer the stars, and will continue to do so for as long as the Emperor's light guides us. However, one should be careful at peering into the darkness behind poisoned stars, for when you peer into the void, so too does the void peer into you. In our next broadcast, I will be breaking down the individual forces of the Ruinous Powers so that you can have a better idea of what makes them unique and how they function. Until next time, as always, this broadcast has been Omnisaya approved. Thank you for listening.